Hello, this is Barnes Pond Life podcast, and I like to call it the Pondcast. And my name's Helen Edward, and I'm very excited today to be interviewing Nigel Edwards. And Nigel is the chair of Hammersmith Bridge SOS. And that is a fascinating subject just as we come up to the local elections, because out on the doorstep, everybody is asking about Hammersmith Bridge. It is the biggest topic. So today we're going to explore what all the options were for Hammersmith Bridge, what the alternatives are for the future. And we're going to hear about how Hammersmith Bridge SOS began, how it was set up, and how Nigel came to chair it. Nigel is going to start by telling you a little bit about his background and why we are very lucky to have Nigel chairing our organisation with his technical background. Nigel, welcome to Barnes Pond Life podcast.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, so I've been involved in the biomedical area for all of my career. So I have a technical background, but I wasn't part of the original founding of Hammersmith Bridge SOS. That was set up by Helen Pennant-Ray and Dame Deirdre Hutton and Nicola Horlick and many others. And I came in, I suppose, about a year into its creation. And we've been campaigning for the reopening of the bridge, particularly for those that are less able to travel, but also for the government to stick to its original promise to reopen the bridge. We are a major world economy, and we should be able to repair a bridge.
Yeah, we should indeed. And, in the meantime, Notre Dame not only burnt down, but has been rebuilt and it looks beautiful.
Absolutely.
And I think as a national embarrassment, we've made our way into New York Times. So where would you like to start the story? Do you want to start it at the beginning when you got involved?
Well, I think that's not really the beginning, but we have campaigned very hard to try and get it up the political agenda. But it's been a real uphill struggle. It really has. And we've had, as you say, very good press coverage, both nationally and internationally, about the state of the bridge and what needs to be done to fix it.
And it continues to make it into the press as, an article, every month or so, isn't there? And it also has been in the House of Commons, a debate from Fleur Anderson, the MP for Putney, last week. Do you want to sort of take us forward to where you think we are now with the bridge and, where the options are, what the alternatives are, where the funding might lie? Do you want to just explain to us where you think we are now?
I mean, Hammersmith and Fulham have focused on the Foster Cowie proposal, which came in about 2 years after the bridge closed. Originally, they were pursuing what I would call a standard repair with a temporary pedestrian bridge. And the actual repair phase was costed at about 80 million. And then Foster Cowie came along, which promised an early resumption of buses and cars, because it would be made off-site and then pushed into place over rollers without putting any pressure on the bridge itself. And so that appeared to be an attractive option. But unfortunately, it's not really, because Hammersmith require a toll for that program, and the Silvertown Tunnel took about 7 years to get through Parliament, because a toll has to be approved through Parliament. So I don't really see it as a very attractive option, and unfortunately it's technical issues. The piers date from 1824, and it took Hammersmith over 4 years to even start to consider whether it was technically viable, whether the piers can bear the weight of two bridges. And they still haven't released that data. So I'm not entirely sure that it is even technically viable, let alone financially viable. Because following the war in Ukraine, fuel prices have gone up hugely. And so we're looking at 250 million, excluding the 54 million already spent. Whereas I don't know what the cost in inflation terms of a standard repair would be, but I doubt whether it's gone up that much from 80 million.
Right. So just tell us a little bit more about what the Cowley Bridge would have looked like. Explained that it would have been put over the top of Hammersmith Bridge, so the weight was carried at either end.
Yes.
Was that the one where the pedestrians
were underneath?
Underneath.
The buses and cars would be on top.
Yeah.
And so a double-decker structure, huge amount of steel for a period of couple of years to actually repair the bridge. And the idea of it was that the structure itself would act as a truss to be able to dismantle the bridge. But as I say, there are other ways of doing it, and it's a very expensive option.
Yeah. And so now looking at the traditional option.
Well, I don't know what the result of the geotechnical surveys were on the piers in the middle of the river.
Okay. Yes.
So it's primarily the piers that are of concern. They should be able to bear the weight of the bridge when refurbished, one would hope, but not necessarily the weight of two bridges. And that's the fundamental problem with Foster Cowie.
Yeah.
So there are options of do nothing, tear the bridge down and put another bridge in its place.
Which a lot of people actually quite like that idea.
Well, I think as Barnes residents, I would have thought we fairly against that one because it would cut us off from all of the tube lines in Hammersmith and cut us north of the river off from Barnes and the Wetlands Centre and Richmond Park and everything.
No, I think their idea is that, you take it down and just build a modern one that actually worked.
Yes, but whilst you're building it, you have 2 years of nobody being able to get to tube lines.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is a real problem. And that's actually a problem for Foster Cowie as well, because every time they do if it were viable, any time they did work on the bridge, they would have to close the bridge completely, 24-hour closures.
Yeah, and we all remember how painful that was.
Yes, we had nearly a year of total closure, and it was extremely painful.
Yeah.
I mean, made slightly less so because of COVID, but nonetheless.
Yeah. So what's your view of the current status where we can walk and cycle and, the middle of the bridge is divided? What's your view of how successful that is?
Well, it's great to have it reopened, at least in part, but the Freedom of Information request answers that we've had from Hammersmith and Fulham say that the bridge is beyond its design life. So it can't go on like that forever. To my mind, there is really not a suitable electric vehicle option for those that are less able to travel because the bridge has a 1.5 ton limit. And Hammersmith and Fulham are not going to raise that. We've asked many times as a committee to increase that, or what extra work would be required to increase that. And there is an issue with one of the anchor chains. But we have not had any response about how much extra investment would be required to fully stabilise the bridge so that it could bear the weight of hopper buses or electric vehicles.
So some people got quite excited about the possible solution.
Yes.
Which they created this lovely video and it did look quite clever. I mean, obviously, it still doesn't solve the problem of ambulances, but it does solve the problem of mobility. What was your view of the electric possible solution?
Well, it's great in theory, but it just doesn't work in practice because there is a 1.5 ton weight limit, and Hammersmith and Fulham have been very clear that will not increase, and those vehicles weigh just under 4 tons. I also think there's a problem of not integrating with the public transport system. It would be much better to have an integrated solution such as the hopper buses, which can carry about 15 people, and integrate with transport links. Because otherwise, if you're less able, you've got to get off at the top of Castle now, get across to the bridge, across the junction with Lonsdale.
Sure.
Do a little hop on a bit privately funded, and you'd have to pay for that. And then you've got to get the other end to the tubes or buses or whatever. So it doesn't really, to my mind, have the capacity or the connectedness that's required of a and it's also that would be just for those that are less able to travel. Whereas, we used to have, 27,000 car movements across the bridge and 5 bus routes. And those were all full in the morning. So it would be good to restore some public transport as well as the blue light services.
Absolutely. Yeah. So many people need that.
Yeah.
So what is Hammersmith Bridge SOS campaigning for now?
It's really campaigning twofold. One, for the resumption of buses and public transport, particularly for the less able in the short term, and then in the long term, the full restoration of the bridge to traffic.
And Have you ever had a chance to meet Stephen Cowan and talk through your proposals?
It's been
Stephen Cowan being the leader of Hammersmith and Fulham Council.
It's been quite difficult to engage with Hammersmith and Fulham. We have put in a number of FOI requests, and some of our members have met Stephen Cowan, but mostly we are struggling to get information about how things are progressing and what the options are.
Yeah.
I've been particularly asking recently about the new structures fund, the £1 billion structures fund, which the government have set up, and which the Transport Secretary says Hammersmith Bridge is a good candidate, but I'm not even sure whether Hammersmith and Fulham plan to actually apply for that fund.
Yeah.
They seem to be much more focused on what I would call the fly under, which is an £800 million replacement for the Hammersmith flyover.
So I was looking at their town plan recently, and there was really no mention of Hammersmith Bridge in the whole document. They've got lots of investment plans for the civic campus, the pedestrianisation of the area around St Paul's Green, a lot of plans around making Hammersmith King Street more beautiful, but they didn't seem to have anything on Hammersmith Bridge, which I was rather disappointed about. What is your view there? Do you think that they don't want us? Do you think they don't want us to have access to their bridge?
Well, I think it's a historical accident that Hammersmith and Fulham have total ownership of the bridge, and with a heritage structure like this that's Grade 2-star listed, I don't think it should be down to any council to bear the brunt of the costs of this bridge. It should be centrally funded.
So I understood from Fleur Anderson's debate last week that one of the things that was clarified was that the three-way solution is still very much in place, and that is where the funding comes both from the government, a third, from the mayor and TfL, a third, and from Hammersmith Council, a third. That is apparently still there on the table.
Yes, but I don't think that was ever a fair proposal. If you look at other bridges, there's a third bridge up in the northeast, and I've just forgotten the name of that bridge. Well, that was 80% funded by DfT. And unfortunately, because Hammersmith Bridge is not classified as a major road, it doesn't get access to national infrastructure funding, which is why the Structures Fund is important for Hammersmith Bridge.
And I mean, a lot of people feel that political will is quite an important ingredient in getting the funding. Obviously, £250 million for the complicated solution is going to be more difficult to secure than £80 million for the first solution. But with a council that's aligned to both the government and the mayor, a lot of people are hoping that perhaps there would be a joined-up solution. What do you think?
Well, I think, as I say, the percentages are not really appropriate. It was when Margaret Thatcher got rid of the GLC back in the 80s and just divvied up the bridges, and this bridge fell to Hammersmith and Fulham. It's not really a bridge that's particularly relevant to them. And even a third contribution, you're looking at 80-90 million. That is an extraordinary sum, and more than TfL has spent on all London bridges in a 10-year period.
That said, though, I've heard the councillors in Wandsworth talking about putting 2 bridges through maintenance in the last 5 years, also very expensive, but they've also managed to keep council tax down at the same time. Yeah,
but the sums involved are less than a tenth of the sums involved for the council for Hammersmith. So I don't think that's a fair comparison, really. And even if you go back and look at the other, historic bridges along the Thames, the sums that a local council have put in, I think the last time there was major work, it's about 10 million in total, of which Wandsworth Council put in about 4, I think. So, we're looking at, as I say, 10 times that amount.
Sure. And what about Battersea Bridge now, which is also out of action?
So we have problems everywhere, and Wandsworth Bridge has been reduced in its number of lanes as well. Pummy Bridge has now been reduced as well due to disastrous remodelling of the traffic lights on the southern end of the bridge. So nothing is flowing. And I looked at the traffic flows. And whilst Chiswick Bridge was managing, I think, 24 miles an hour, the other bridges, Wandsworth, Putney, Kew, are between 7 and 9 miles an hour. So nothing is moving.
So we're saying really it's a London-wide problem that needs a government solution.
It really does need a government solution. And I think the data that traffic is reducing is somewhat overstated, because actually that data is done every 2 years, and it's now based on 1 day's data. And on every bridge, at least one of the data points over the year has been during school holidays. So it's unfortunately artificially overestimating the reduction of traffic. And it's been particularly Wandsworth Bridge that's reduced, and Chiswick Bridge that have reduced in terms of real volumes. And Wandsworth is probably down to the reduction in the number of lanes and the capacity of the bridge. Not quite sure what's going on with
And
Chiswick
also
Bridge.
the traffic is just so terrible. It's not really a viable route, is it? Sometimes, and that's obviously the main complaint that Fleur Anderson has been making in Putney.
Yes, I mean, traffic across Putney Bridge hasn't reduced at all. It's very difficult indeed. Absolutely gridlocked.
And I can remember 20 years ago, we used to use Putney a lot, Barnes residents, we used to shop there, and I think people don't go there like they used to because it's difficult to get there.
It is difficult to get there, and the issue is that in both directions, west and east, we have a single carriageway road on the south of the river. To Putney Bridge, there's no bus lane. To Mortlake, there's no bus lane. So it can take 40 to 50 minutes on a bus to get round to Hammersmith. And that's before any works at the Mortlake Brewery have started, where there might be 1,200-1,300 units. So it's going to be an absolute nightmare getting anywhere once that work starts, which is why we really do need central government to step in and actually say, right, this needs to be funded. And I think they need to take control of the bridge. And that's one of the things we're lobbying for, because it's clear that Hammersmith and Fulham are not interested in any further work on the bridge. They've kind of washed their hands of it. In fact, it would appear that the Foster Cowie planning application that they submitted to their own board has been withdrawn. So I don't know how they're going to get money from the Government Structures Fund when they don't have a plan.
So that's where we are now.
It is.
The debate that was in the House of Commons last week, it raised the options, it raised Simon Lightwood's structural fund. And it seemed to me, when I read it through, that it looked like to me that we were back to the drawing board, and that, the bridge is not anybody's priority. I felt rather disheartened, but I don't know, maybe you're feeling a bit more positive about it.
I wish I could say that I was, but I think it really needs to be taken over by TfL and DFT and properly funded. As I've said, the sums involved are an order of magnitude greater than other bridges. This is a very important historic bridge. Bazalgette is a major engineer in the life of the UK and created the whole sewer system. The original designer as well is an identical bridge in Budapest, and that bridge has been rebuilt in the last few years. They discovered problems there, and they got on and fixed it. And we really need central government to step in and actually get this sorted.
Yeah, because there's so many, really heart-moving stories about people's daily lives being blighted by having to either drive all the way around, take transport all the way around to hospitals. There are so many stories. And I think our case is very strong, but it just feels so frustrating. 7 years on, there seems to be so little conviction. Yeah. Can we leave our listeners with a positive message at all?
Well, we are trying to engage Hammersmith and Fulham and establish whether they are going to put in a request for funding from the Structures Fund. If they are to do that, hopefully it will be funded. Certainly our local MPs, Sarah Olney and Fleur Anderson in Putney are pushing for some action, but I really think it needs more central government action, and for the task force to actually have a remit and some teeth, and for it to take over the running of the bridge.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else I should ask you? Nigel?
Well, I think we touched briefly on the alternatives in terms of long term, and I said that there are long-term issues with the structure. It does need to be repaired.
Yeah.
So kicking the can down the road cannot continue for terribly long until there are further issues that would cause the complete closure of the bridge. And as I've said, the Omeo 10-person electric proposal just isn't possible. I think we do need to have an idea of what extra work is required to get the bridge up to scratch. If there's an interim measure that would enable, as I said, hopper buses or things like that to function. But I think it really does need a full repair. And the issues with just knocking it down and starting again is that unless you have a temporary pedestrian bridge, then the residents north and south of the river will not be able to cross the river for 2, 3, 4 years, however long it takes to build a bridge.
And increasingly, I feel that Barnes has become a sort of peninsula. It's almost an island, getting in, getting out. It's like harder and harder. So
it is, but with those routes out, both west and east, being so restricted, we have a real problem that's going to get worse unless something is done. And I think the government does need to grasp the nettle.
Yeah.
And the Hammersmith and Fulham, I think, have fairly enough have said, well, we'd have to have a toll to fund a bridge. But the mayor isn't in favour of a toll. So you have different parts of the government against each other on how that proposal might be funded. So we really do need move on, have it funded by TfL and DfT.
Yeah. Well, I think, you share our frustration, but, thank you very much for all the campaign work that you've done in trying to bring it to the attention of both the leaders of the council, the MPs and government. And we must just keep that pressure up until we get what we need.
Thank you. I mean, it's been a whole team effort over the years. And
you've got some very good people on your team there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I tell you what, with just a final story, I'd love you to tell me about how they lit up the bridge on Valentine's Day, because I love that story.
Yes, well, I know Chairman Chris of LCI, and that's a company that specialises in visual effects internationally. And they very kindly agreed to help us illuminate the bridge with projection mapping, very powerful projectors to put that message, broken bridge, broken hearts, broken promises.
Yes, it was so powerful. I know. And if you Google it, it comes straight up. Yeah, I loved that. It was great. Well, look, thank you so much, Nigel, for coming to talk to us. And we wish you luck with your project, and maybe I can give you a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.